the digital dollar project is that, a tokenized US dollar is not antithetical to further private sector innovation, including things like stable coins. If anything, as I'll explain in a second, we think it's additive. I mean, at the end of the day, the system around money, if you view the system around money as a public good and as basic infrastructure that you then build upon, I think it helps explain how upgrading that infrastructure can help unleash additional innovation. So
President Trump is trying to pass a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, and part of that bill includes 5G technology and locking out China out of the fifth generation internet markets. I think countries around the globe will update their technology infrastructure domestically. These domestic systems will then connect to a set of global standards that the G20 agrees to. These global standards will cater to money, trade, energy, etc. There will be intranets of value and an internet of value. Listen to Brian Bellendorf from Hyperledger.
Of the stream, that no matter what happens up here in terms of tariffs, in terms of messaging between world leaders, that ultimately what we're building is designed to last longer than any US president, designed to last longer than any Chinese premier. Those governments will turn over, but these technologies are here to stay. And no better way to make this a coming together of equals and peers than to really foster the development of a supply chain network that spans from factories in China to consumers in the West, perhaps even all the way back to the source of the raw materials in Asia and Africa and other places. So that's perhaps a bit globalist in nature. Certainly don't believe it's naive. It is optimistic, but I do think these cycles come and go and will outlast those.
Another way to think about this is that I was trying to come up with analogies when you look at the infrastructure argument, and you could think about the system of money as akin to highways. When the US government decided to build interstate highways, did it have an impact on certain transport businesses? Of course it did. It had an impact because it was a choice to make big, well, at the time maybe it was only 2-lane, but to make wider lane interstate systems. But what did that do? It enabled significant economic activity and new transport businesses to build on top of that. So again, holding that parallel, you can see how tokenizing the US dollar should enable a lot further innovation in economic activity around payment structures. Today we've made a design choice. We have physical cash. That's the choice we've made. We have, as a result of that, an ATM system that's developed. We have different types of payment systems that have developed to fill gaps and build on top of that. The same thing would happen if you upgrade the system to tokenize money, but we think with even better benefit to markets, to individuals, and then
the road analogy that he just used reminds me of Ripple's shipping container analogy.
Voila, the shipping container. Like, you look at a shipping container, it's just a big metal box, right? Well, actually, it was a huge innovation. The shipping container was standardized around the world, and it kind of revolutionized how physical goods were transported. And there's a word I'll use a few times here, and that's interoperability. So kind of component one of making a truly efficient global economy is interoperability of physical goods. And I'd argue that the innovation of the shipping container was a fundamental milestone in ensuring that happened in a way. Because when you think about what happens is, I can go anywhere in the world and that shipping container is the same. I can go from factory, putting that shipping container on a truck, that goes to a train, that goes to a cargo ship, that ship goes to a new port in a totally different spot in the world. It'll be the same infrastructure that has been built around that allows the logistics around shipping to happen in a far more efficient way.
Intranets is the roads. The internet is the shipping container.
And Kevin, I'll end with one note, and that is that there are some that might think that this is such an important project that it needs to be done exclusively by the official sector. I would counter that and say this is such an important project. It absolutely needs to be driven by the official sector, but with enormous amount of input from the private sector. That's how the United States was able to land on the moon. That's how the United States was able to build the internet. When the United States does big things, they're a combination of private sector expertise, innovativeness, and sense of urgency, and public sector concerns for the public interest and setting down the right policies. And that's what we've got to bring to bear here if we're going to build what is vitally important, I believe, for the future of the dollar and the future of money is that the values of democratic values, of free enterprise, of the rule of law, and the right balance of privacy be brought to bear in the future of the US dollar.
We have all seen the evidence that Ripple has the ear to the White House. Ken Carson joining the Ripple board, Gene Sperling, the Ripple board, Ryan Zagone on the Federal Reserve's Faster Payment Task Force. The United States is getting input, but it's a matter of national security. This is why no announcements, no price movements, no nothing.
Certainly don't want to walk back from that. So you would want to develop a system that is interoperable with other major central bank initiatives as well. That's why one of the things that we've focused on doing through the Digital Dollar Project is to engage closely with other central banks that are pursuing their various pilots and trials associated with CBDC. At the end of the day, that's going to be really important. And there are certain groups like the IMF and World Bank, and you have BIS that are focused as well on interoperability. So we certainly don't want to create a system that walks back and creates an even more siloed type structure. That would completely defeat the purpose of what we were talking about at the outset, which is the internet allows connectivity of computers with relatively limited friction and relatively few intermediaries. So we shouldn't be adding those layers back in. You know, and actually to make the point too, that if we view this and if we view tokenization of the US dollar as an offensive opportunity rather than something defensive in nature, there's a lot of opportunity even further dollarization. Now that's something that has its own set of challenges. I mean, there may be certain global emerging markets that would struggle with free access to tokenized USD. But certainly there would be a lot of advantages for end users and for consumers on the ground. So it is really important that as we design our systems, we think about openness, we think about interoperability. In my view, that just unlocks the benefits of tokenization and all of these trends and dynamics that Chris and I are talking about. So Chris, I don't know if you have further thoughts on that topic.
No, I think interoperability is critically important. It's one of the reasons why the Digital Dollar Project and its team and its advisory group have spent a fair amount of time talking with our colleagues in the UK, at the BIS in Switzerland, and our friends at the Riksbank, with others that are working on developing central bank digital currency. It's one of the reasons why it's so important that the United States gets started now. It's because these other efforts are underway and they're making good progress. If the United States suddenly wakes up 3 years, 5 years from now and says, oh, we now need to get in the game, a lot of the protocols are going to be developed. Now is the time for the United States to be in the game, working with others so that when, and I believe it's not a question of if, it's certainly a question of when, the world's major economies all move to a digital currency system, they're all interoperable with one another, that the core foundational architecture was set at this point in time. And we think the United States needs to get in those games, and it needs to go further, however. And we at the Digital Dollar Project are certainly encouraging an ongoing dialogue with efforts underway elsewhere.
The intranets of value will have their own standard. The internet of value will have the standard. CBDCs atomically swapped into XRP and sent into micropayments. The U.S. gifted the escrow or a percentage of the escrow to have the dollar dethroned. The U.S. gets to back away from bailing out the world. Trade is balanced. Trump formally meets Ripple. Bill Clinton speaks at Swell. A 2018 SEC document that states it was meeting with Ripple, including Brad Garlinghouse and David Schwartz.